seconds. T-minus 40 seconds. T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Own it, own it, own it, Kong. I own it. It did.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
What is up, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. We are here for WWT Live to break down all the latest news. But of course, I am not here alone. I had to bring in a good crew to help me deliver this news. First of all, we got Mr. Professor Gerard. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Ella?
I'm fantastic to be chatting with you today. But of course, we have a little trio going on here today. We got Mr. A Dazzle up in the UK with us as well. What's up?
I'm good. I'm currently scared because I know TK's in the background, but I'm good. Other than that, I'm good.
You're good. I'm telling you.
Ella.
Here we go.
Ella, J. It's Ella, J. Ella, J. It's Ella J.
I like that though. I'm just waiting for yours, A. I'm just waiting for yours, A Dazzle.
He's the safest. You're the safest of all of us.
I think I like mine. Gerard's is kind of funny. Gerard's is kind of taking a jab at him because he's telling him to put it in the box. So I will take mine. I'm telling you, they're cooking up something for you. Knowing TK, they're cooking up something special for you. No one is safe. Exactly.
No one is safe.
I'm worried. I'm expecting something like me in like some Peaky Blinders type outfit, and you know what I mean, that kind of madness. Especially if Kane's got anything to do with it, it's going to be very English.
Yeah.
I just want Kane trying to do an English accent. That's what I want.
No.
Must see TV.
Exactly, though. No one is safe. Ron, thank you for joining us. That's right.
Yes.
Thank you for being here as usual. I will say there's nothing too crazy really news-wise today. You know, there's nothing really like outlandish or anything. There's a couple injuries, but I will say today's news is actually pretty tame for once.
Yeah.
Well, except maybe the one thing, because there can be speculation as to why, you know, things went a certain way, but I will say today's a pretty tame episode. That would be hilarious. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I need to see Kane doing an English accent. I just need to hear it. So TK, I know you're listening. The audience wants it. Dazzle, you got to do what the people want, and the people want Kane in an English accent. Make you a little demo.
Here's actually the scariest part. The scariest part is you said that the news was going to be tame, which means this could actually be a very wild show, all things considered.
That's true.
So here we go. We're there.
That's true.
That alone makes things very unpredictable. You just don't know what's going to pop up.
That's true. But, you know, I feel like we'll kind of start out with the thing that I was alluding to. I feel like, you know, it's not overly crazy, but it leads to a lot of speculation, even though they prefaced it by saying AEW did not influence their decision. And of course, we're talking about Dax Harwood, FTR with Dax Harwood, the podcast that's on ad-free shows. It's been running since late last year. I think November, December.
End of December is when it first started.
And it's certainly stirred up a lot of news. Dax is a great guy, a family guy, but he's also not afraid to speak his mind, especially regarding some of wrestling's most controversial figures being CM Punk. Don't know, there's been a lot of news in there. There's been rumors that AEW, that some of the locker room hasn't been happy with him talking about Punk and all of this stuff going on. But they announced recently that their podcast, like you said, that started at the end of December, that after one season, they're going to be ending it. And Dax Harwood explained why. He said, I think we both feel we were causing more harm than good, even though we were trying to do good. It just didn't come across that way or portray it that way. We were more of a detriment to professional wrestling than we thought, and never wanted to do that. Starting out, he said it, he wanted it to be a good thing, to show a different side of professional wrestling, the positive side. But, wrestling's not always positive, especially when it's a lot of the topics were involving like Triple H. There's always the AEW, WWE divide. So there's been a lot of things. What do we think?
I think I understand the reason, but I would have rather him carried on. I guess for me, I get it mainly because of the most recent thing with the whole CM Punk coming back and him being so, he's like holding the flag for the CM Punk return. And I personally don't care for a CM Punk return. So it didn't really go down too well with me, but at the same time, the podcast, as you said, has kind of enlightened us with a few things. I love the fact that Dax isn't scared to say what he thinks. And that's what you want from a podcast. But at the same time, we are where we are.
Yeah. And Joseph kind of chiming in here. Yeah. They said that AEW didn't influence their decision to end it, but I feel like it might, at least the backlash to some of it, I have to assume, has definitely influenced it. But Joseph bringing up a good point. Yeah, it started 3.5 months after Brawl Out, so it was kind of relatively not that long after it. And plus, like he's saying, a lot of the podcasts serve the purpose. FTR has a 4-year renewal on their contract. That's true. It'd be different if they were leaving, then they can kind of just say whatever. Assuming AEW, I think, definitely has some input, but especially with the rumors of the third show and the roster splitting to kind of cater to Punk and FTR, at least Dax kind of being outspoken of wanting to team with Punk, which we know is a controversial topic in it of itself.
Yeah, I think this is a mixture of a couple of things. On one hand, you have to remember, from the time this started until basically now, they, being FTR, were free agents. And the big question was, where were they going to go?
Yeah.
So at that point, they really had nobody governing them, so they could say whatever they wanted. So I think you have that. Now with you signing with AEW, you really do kind of have to hold the reins. So there's that. The other side of it is, I'm not really sure that Dax was prepared for what the wrestling podcast space is. See, when we do podcasts, because we're not wrestlers, like, people will listen to us, but they will take what wrestlers say as gospel because wrestlers are there. So it's kind of the eyewitness to a thing. If I saw a thing, you're going to naturally believe me a lot more than if I'm speculating or pontificating about a thing. So I think Dax didn't understand that when he would say something, it's news.
Yeah, I would have to write a lot of that news too.
Right. It's not just speaking your mind. People are going to respond. People are going to take what you say as gospel because you are one of the boys. You are a respected wrestler. You're employed by one of these companies. You were employed by another company. You've wrestled all over the world. You've seen things that we could only imagine. So naturally, we're going to, just like with Jericho's podcast, if something happens on there, we're going to take that as gospel. Any wrestler that has a podcast at this point, we pay attention to because they're going to have insight that the average journalist or podcaster is not going to have. So I think he may have just gotten overwhelmed by the reality of wrestling podcasting, which is whatever you say is going to become news. So you can't just flippantly say things because your opinion is now deemed as news. And so I think he kind of said, so I think it's a combination of that plus the AEW signing and whatever else might be going on behind the scenes that made him go, okay, enough's enough and it's time for a change.
Yeah, like you were saying, I write for 3 different sites. A lot of the news especially comes from ad-free shows, like with people like Matt Hardy, Jeff Jarrett, Eric Bischoff, you know, Jim Ross, there's Jake the Snake, you know, Ted DiBiase's coming out with one next month.
Right.
A lot of their opinions turn into news. So-and-so thinks about this, talks about this, you know, some of them are more outspoken than others, but definitely when a lot of it's revolving around hot topics like CM Punk, he's close to CM Punk, you know, that's kind of been one of the biggest stories out of the last 9 months now, 8 months now has been CM Punk. So, you know, I agree with you. I think it has to do with, they say it's, you know, no AEW influence. Maybe they didn't say it directly. And we don't know for sure, but I would have to think there had to have been some influence from internal Mr. Tony Khan there.
The conversation definitely happened.
Yeah.
Not that much.
So I don't think it exactly said when it's ending, but I do know it's ending soon. So after, I don't even know how many episodes they've had. They've had at least 10. I know that, but they're ending after 1 season, which I think. That might be the shortest podcast ever on ad-free shows. I'm not gonna lie.
Probably.
I think it is.
Probably.
We'll see what happens though. But also, like we said at the beginning of the show, there's also been some injury news lately. Injury updates. Gerard, take your pick. We got 2 of them on the docket.
Well, let's start with Big E, who I know a lot of people have been concerned about ever since his injury back in March of last year, which happened live on SmackDown. Still a very scary sight as I think about it, where he ended up fracturing his C1 vertebrae and his C6 vertebrae after a belly-to-belly suplex from Ridge Holland, where it was not fully elevated and he landed on his head. It was not pretty. A lot of people were hoping that we might see a Big E return at WrestleMania. That didn't happen. What did happen, though, was that there was a scan that happened after WrestleMania to kind of see where Big E is on things. So he talked about this on a recent podcast, and part of what he said was that he has a complicated fracture, and so it's going to take a little bit more time to heal. So they've got to sit down with doctors and the like. He says from his space, he feels great. He doesn't have any function issues. He doesn't have any pain issues. He said he was back in the gym 2 weeks after he broke his neck, and we remember because he was very open about posting about that and things like that. But he says that your neck has to be in a certain condition to be able to deal with the rigors of being in the ring on a nightly basis, which I'm sure we all can understand. So as of right now, no news is good news. And when I say no news, I mean like it's not, he can't wrestle, but it's not that he has the all clear just yet. But it's great to know that he's feeling good. And he is at least keeping busy as well, because amid all the things he's been doing, from judging NIL tryouts and the like, he now has officially been named the home game MC for the Michigan Panthers of the USFL, which is kind of exciting to see. So they made an announcement yesterday via press release that Big E would be the team's official MC for all of their home games, and he begins his duties on April the 30th. Will serve in that role through June the 18th, and on that night, the Michigan Panthers will hold a special WWE Superstars night. So that's pretty cool. And of course, around then, of course, they're going to be doing, I'm sure, a lot of promotion for the upcoming SummerSlam event, which will be in August. So shout out to Big E, who has stayed at least visible, you know, in terms of the WWE world, not necessarily in terms of in-ring content or that type of thing, but he's doing a lot of ambassador work, all of those kinds of things, which is exciting to see. And we definitely hope that he's in great shape. He's obviously in great spirits, and hopefully his career will get to continue.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of sad at the same time that, you know, we haven't had the full New Day faction together in a long time, because even when E was champ, you know, he was on Raw. They were he floated sometimes, but he was mainly on Raw. They were on SmackDown. They came together a little bit for that I think him and Kofi teamed up, but then Xavier was out. So we haven't
Right.
gotten a lot of them all together in a long time. But I will say Xavier Woods is getting a title shot this Friday, is what I think it is.
Correct.
The second time in his WWE career he's getting a singles title shot. Ironically, I was actually at the first one that he had in 2015 for the United States Championship. I remember that match and that segment between Cena and him. I think went a good 40 minutes, like the segment leading into the match. But only the second time in his career he's getting a shot at a singles championship. You know, if they're not going to do King of the Ring and maybe give us another run at, you know, maybe King Woods, I'm glad to see him getting a little bit of a single spotlight. I don't think he's going to win it, but you know, that would be a pleasant surprise if he did.
Yeah, sure,
it would
sure. It's gonna be interesting to see how it works out, how it's gonna play out. I think it's a little bit obvious he's not going to win, which is disappointing. And when I say disappointing, not that he's not going to win, but the fact that we kind of know he's not going to win.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to see. It's going to be interesting to see whether anything carries on after that in terms of his singles run, or whether the feud continues or not. But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, so that'll be coming up this Friday. But, you know, we mentioned, you know, Big E still recovering from his injury. Another recent talent, actually, who just cut a killer promo on Monday, that being Trish Stratus, was battling through an injury during WrestleMania, which is crazy to think about. She had a partially torn hamstring, I think it was. So she was talking on Busted Open Radio earlier today, and she said that nobody knew. Yeah, nobody literally knew. I couldn't even tell that she was injured, but she said, you know, this time I had this injury, so she was a little unsure about it going in. She says she was riding a bike to get it together and doing fitness and keeping up with their health, but it was a lot of pressure, obviously. But, you know, she wanted to be in that match, and she wanted to prove that she belonged in that match, and she certainly did. Her, Lita, and Becky Lynch came out on top, but that's crazy to think about. Also 47 years old, you know, battling through an injury like that where it's kind of in your leg, which is a prominent part, you know, of your body. Yeah, exactly. Trish Stratus battling through an injury at WrestleMania. Obviously, things have changed now, but did you gentlemen watch Raw this past Monday?
Did.
Yes. What do we think of her promo?
Gerard, you go for it. You go.
I think she crushed the promo. I do, and I think it's been so long since we've seen heel Trish that it really did feel new. It felt new. You know, we forgot that she, you know, kind of started this thing as a heel, but it's hard to argue with a lot of what she said, which is also very, very interesting. And it's really one of the first times that we have seen someone from that era really come back to say, hey, wait a minute, you guys forgot about me, you know, and they could have a legitimate claim to that. Trish, you know, one of the biggest names in that entire era that led us, you know, kind of to this space. And it's interesting because after Trish and Lita, we ended up kind of in the official divas era, you know, and the folks that were there, no knock to, you know, the Maurices of the world and the, you know, Eve Torreses of the world and the early Bellas and things like that. But they were not wrestling at the level, the strong style kind of level, the intense level as a Trish Stratus and a Lita. So you could argue that the women's wrestling presentation of WWE took a step back after Trish and Lita left. And it would take almost a decade for it to get to this space where we could call it the women's revolution. So she has a major point in this whole thing. And a Trish-Becky feud is something that we didn't see on our bingo card, but it makes a lot of sense. If Trish is coming back to fight anybody, it's got to be top tier. Makes sense that it's Becky.
I think it was amazing that, you know, after she attacked Becky Lynch, I was just like, why? What was the point? Where are we going here? How did this happen? Blah, blah, blah. But after that promo, as Gerard said, there was nothing to argue. And that in itself, for me, is the biggest part of that promo, to make sense of something I was very much confused of. You know, people didn't understand. And then she just said what she said. I was like, oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, you know, I think it was amazing to see. And it's given me like, you know, a hope to see what she now does from here on. And especially, obviously, we had this whole thing of Becky saying she's not going to be at Raw and blah, blah, blah. And so we had that whole speculation going as well. But I kind of almost forgot about that. While Trish was talking, I didn't really care that Becky wasn't there anymore. So yeah, it was a fantastic promo.
Yeah.
My question is too, you know, we've been talking about the rumors, reports are saying that she's going to be here till SummerSlam, which is like August 5th, right? It's still April. What does she, I don't do we think that she carries? I think they're definitely going to square off well before August. But where do they go from here? Do they have Trish feud with somebody else? Like what is the story going to be? That's the question. I don't know.
I think this era, the Triple H era, which it's very safe to say is happening, is lending itself to longer term storytelling, right? So there's not the pressure. Oh, she turned on her last week. She cut the promo this week. They fight at Backlash.
Yeah.
Like that's not the pressure. And she is somebody that should not be fighting on an ancillary pay-per-view.
True.
She is Trish Stratus. If we're honest, this shouldn't happen either until London with Money in the Bank or SummerSlam. It shouldn't happen any other time. She is, so there are enough things that they can do. And remember, if you're going to be on Raw, you got 3 hours to kill.
True.
So we don't have to have that story every single week. And if we do, it doesn't have to be, you know, them coming to blows. There can be little stuff that's thrown here and there and little things, because we got a ways to go before we get to SummerSlam. So I think they can drag this thing out and make it work, because again, Trish should not have to travel the roads every week. She's Trish Stratus. She's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Shouldn't Hall of Famers have some degree of privilege? I think so. Now, poor Rey Mysterio is looking like he did before he ever got inducted. Like, why'd they do that? I don't understand it. So yeah, but give Trish that space and let us build for this. This is a big match. So don't just throw it away.
We also have that closure with Lita that we still need to get to, because Trish said that she attacked Lita. So there's that too.
I want to go to Joseph's last comment, because it's something that I kind of thought about when you mentioned that Trish is going to be around till SummerSlam. Trish Stratus versus Bianca Belair. Oh, that would be massive. I think that would be massive. How it happens, I have no idea, but Bianca Belair kind of getting involved in this in some way, whether it be through Becky versus Bianca and Trish and Lita around in some way. But Trish squaring up, or Bianca squaring up to Trish in some way, I think would be even bigger than when Sasha Banks squared up to Trish at the Royal Rumble a few years back. So that would be interesting. Whether she dethrones her or not, I don't know. It would make a little more sense for Bianca to beat Trish and have that on as part of her record as well. But yeah, that would be interesting.
I'm also curious to know, because Triple H said that every superstar is eligible for this draft that starts next week. Does that include Trish and Lita? That I feel like wherever, you know, if they're not in there, I feel like they're just going to follow wherever Becky goes. But that's an interesting point. Like, I feel like Trish Stratus, she started out at the beginning of when the draft started. The draft started like the mid 2000s, right? That would have been towards the tail end of Trish's career. She's never really had like a draft moment. So I think that would be cool to see like Trish Stratus get drafted in 2023. How weird would that be?
and would they draft, like, I'm not sure if Trish and Lita are deemed regular roster members, or
I
are
don't
they just
know.
kind of so would they? I don't know, but I do think that the draft is going to get very this could be the best draft we've ever had.
We're hoping.
Yeah, it could be. Something tells me next week we'll do like a draft special, just to,
for sure.
Because it starts next Friday, and then it's the following Monday, the 28th too. I think if they don't, they're just gonna follow Becky. You know, Lita's gonna be like, what the heck, man? I think I think they might have the closure with Lita. I don't know. How long is Lita going to be out? Do we think Becky gets to Trish first, or do we think it'll be Lita? That's the question I have. I don't know.
Trish and Lita. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I think it's better for Becky first. And you know what? A Trish versus Lita at SummerSlam, if the build-up's correct,
that's true.
Would be decent. I think that would be good. That would be really good. But
I'd be down for it. That might entice me to go to Detroit then, for real.
Wow.
But we will see what happens. Joseph bringing up another point. Yeah, I still think they could have gone about it a different way instead of, I get Trish attacking her, but like not even have Lita defending her title. Just the whole thing. I feel like they could have done the Trish turn a different way. The execution though afterwards, like that promo was fire. Like there's no denying that. But I just still think they could have done the turn a little bit differently. I don't know. But it makes sense that they would want to get the titles off of them. But I think we were talking about earlier, Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné, she's reportedly coming up to the end of her contract, her deal with New Japan Pro Wrestling. She's scheduled to have a title defense, I know, this weekend at the All-Star Grand Queendom for Stardom. So that's going to be coming up. The question is she going to lose her title? Is she going to stay? We don't know, but I feel like the outcome of that match is going to be really telling regardless, if she chooses to stay or not. But at least it looks like she'll be staying in Japan, because regardless if her contract is up or not, it looks like she's thinking about moving to Japan. So I think that would be huge for her. She's been huge with New Japan and Stardom and kind of the stars. There's a big pay-per-view coming up later in the year called Forbidden Door. A lot of people are talking about that. What do we think about Mercedes Moné? Do we think that she'll extend this deal, or if she doesn't, what do we think she does next?
This was a question that we were talking about just yesterday, Gerard and Mex as well. And I asked the question, like, what does she have to hold that championship in order for her to continue? And I guess we kind of come to the conclusion that it would be best for both her and New Japan if she carries on, that she holds that championship. So it makes Sunday very, very interesting. The anticipation is high. And I think it will answer a lot of questions. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean that the answers to those questions are set in stone either.
Yeah.
Because she could continue. Whether she loses, she can continue. Whether she wins, we know she's continuing. So Sunday, there's a high anticipation for Sunday for sure. Definitely.
Gerard?
Yeah, I agree. My thought is this, this whole thing about her definitely moving to Japan. It's kind of like if you have worked, and certainly with this pandemic, if you've gotten a job and you worked remotely for however long, there comes a point where they're going to ask you to come into the office. And if you're committed to the job, you come into the office. And if the office is in a different city, you move, because flying back and forth gets expensive and they need access to you, and there are certain things that proximity does that just being remote doesn't. So sure, I can fly in for a date here and a date there, but if I'm going to commit, then I'm going to relocate. Sis is not relocating to come back and work to AEW. Let me just tell you that now.
Right.
Okay. It's not happening. So we talked about this yesterday, and one of the things that we said was that, this initial contract could have been like a trial deal. A trial deal to say, hey, do we like you? Do you like us? Are we a good fit for each other? If we are, then let's go ahead and make this a thing. And I think her decision to say, hey, I need to go to Japan is making it a thing. She is not. I don't believe all that she went through for 7 months, being out of space with WWE to free herself up at the top of the year to go to Japan was for 3 months. I don't believe that. I don't believe that her legacy has been cemented in Japan. It's like she just got there and we're just seeing who Mercedes Moné is. It'd be silly for her to turn around and for New Japan to be like, nah, we're good. Thanks. So I definitely think we're going to be seeing her win or lose we're going to be seeing her in Japan, New Japan, Stardom, whatever else. She might make some trips to the US to say hi to everybody, but rest assured, if she's talking about moving for real, that should tell us all we need to know.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. It's unclear, but I feel like a lot of us thought it was weird that her, like you said, you bring up a good point though, that maybe it was kind of like a trial. Let's feel each other out. Let's see how it goes, but leave the door open to extend it. We just haven't heard anything. I'm sure we'll get more answers after All-Star Grand Queendom this weekend.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that would be crazy for her to only go there for 3 matches plus the one appearance at New Japan.
Right.
I mean, Julia also was suggesting a winner takes all match. So, I mean, there's a lot that she still has to do and can do because she's just getting started through Stardom and New Japan, let alone, obviously New Japan has the relationship with Impact, the relationship with AEW. Like we said, I don't think she's ever going full-time in AEW, but, that forbidden door for a one-off is always there. Impact just announced another cooperated event with New Japan in August. Obviously, Forbidden Door is in June. So I think there's a lot of possibility. A lot of people have their eyes and money on Mercedes Moné. So, and rightfully so. So I'm excited to see what she does next. I would be very shocked if she lost this weekend.
Yeah.
But also if she does, lose, I don't know, maybe that changes things. I don't know. But I think if she's literally talking about, moving to Japan, then I think that's a sign that she's going to be staying there for a while, like you said, Gerard. We'll see what happens. If we do think, I was just about to say this, you could do, that's what I'm saying. She could be asked for a Forbidden Door or a Multiverse United. If it's Forbidden Door, do we think it would be against Hayter? That's assuming Hayter still has the title at that point, though, too.
I think there are a few people it could be against. It could be against Hayter. It could be against Britt Baker. It could be against Saraya. It could be any of those three. I mean, even Toni Storm, that's a possible fourth.
Yeah.
But I think it only has power if she comes in as the IWGP Women's Champion. I mean, if she doesn't and just comes in as Mercedes, it's not going to hit the same. It'll hit, but it won't hit the same. There is just a lot of power behind the image of her carrying that championship into spaces where it's never been. Seeing her at WrestleCon with that title, seeing her at these premieres with that title. At these premieres with a title that is not WWE automatically gets eyes on that. So it is the best of both possible worlds for Mercedes and for New Japan and for Stardom. So all of them would be foolish not to pull this off. If she ends up in AEW as an AEW talent, it's not going to hit the same. She has to be a New Japan talent, traveling the world, spreading the gospel of New Japan. That is what's going to make this thing pop. Other than that, it doesn't hit the same. You don't want to go in as the ex-WWE person who doesn't have a current title to hold. So I think that's going to be the way it's got to be her as a champion representing New Japan.
There's also multiple ex-WWE people there, though. But I feel like she's on a different level. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. She'd be looped in with the ex-WWE people instead of standing out as, hey, I'm the flag bearer of New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's a big difference. Big difference.
Yeah.
Massive difference. And, you got to think about, the impact that she has going into these spaces, as Gerard said, like the premieres with that championship. You can't even name any men who have done a similar thing since maybe WCW. You know what I mean? And that was however long ago. So the fact that she's in this position and the fact that New Japan have this right now is something that no one else has. So for them to kind of, whether they give that up or they lose it because the negotiations didn't go well or whatever it is, would be crazy. So she needs to hold that title for at least a year. Let New Japan do whatever she's got to do with her, or do whatever they've got to do with her. Send her to Forbidden Door. Doesn't really matter necessarily who she faces. The title definitely doesn't have to be on the line at all, but she just has to make that entrance with that title in her hand. And it's done. It's done.
There are too many people connected to this. I mean, New Japan's winning and Stardom is winning.
Right.
And I think New Japan is just as vested in Stardom winning as they are in themselves winning. Nobody else is carrying the international flag of Stardom right now that is as recognizable as Mercedes is. So you're looking at two companies who are depending upon this one. Like, for real, a lot of folks are about to order this pay-per-view who've never watched a Stardom pay-per-view before. Most didn't even know how to access it. That's the power of Mercedes Moné. Do you lose that? No, you don't lose that. They're smart people. They're not going to lose
that. You're right. But whatever she does, whoever it may or may not be against, again, we're just speculating. We're months out from that. We still have Double or Nothing. We still have to see what Mercedes does this weekend, any other events. We still have to see if she extends her contract, first of all. That's most important right there.
She probably already has, and they just haven't reported it. Like, this is, they're good business people.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. We got a lot of other kind of rocks to line up in order for this to even happen, but we will see. Talking about kind of getting their ducks in a row. There's also been some news. Everybody's going live nowadays, live for pay-per-views, live for programming. Impact pre-tapes their programming for their television shows, but they go live for their pay-per-views. MLW is still kind of getting their footing. They have MLW Underground, which they film months ahead of time, but a lot of people have been wondering, so you don't have to see the spoilers all the time, because there really is no live content at all for MLW, whether it be pay-per-view or programming. But Court Bauer was talking on Busted Open Radio that he said, I think he promised by the summer that they were deep in talks with some potential partners, did not name the partners, to get themselves up and running for live programming occasionally. Didn't state whether it'd be for pay-per-views or for their television shows. I do know that obviously they're still signed with the Reels right now for the US, but I believe that deal runs out at least in May. It's been unclear whether that was extended or not, but at least their deal with the Reels for MLW Underground goes through at least May. And then obviously they just signed on internationally with Premier streaming platform to run MLW Underground on the international, like UK all around. But I think this would be a huge asset for MLW to keep elevating their game, give us some live content, because, kind of spoiler alert, one of the premier champions just signed with AEW, and, she had a title match against Delmi XO. Spoiler alert, new champion was crowned. I don't think I think people saw that was coming, but it still has not aired yet. And this was, I think, taped April 6th. So it's been at least 2.5, 3 weeks since that. I don't know when it's going to air. But I'm just saying, it's something like that, people would love to see live. Sometimes these things don't get aired till like 2 months, 3 months later. And it's something like that, especially, fans are probably already looking it up, so I think live would definitely help them out a lot, at least occasionally.
Yeah, live is the way things are these days. And if it's not going to be, if it's going to be taped, then it needs to air super, super soon.
Yeah.
Other than that, like, the thrill of it is gone, because you can now find out that information.
Yeah.
That's what's different about the internet age. This Reels thing is interesting to me. And it's interesting because, number one, it's very hard to find Reels. That's the first part. But then, and I still have to check, and I'm trying to look feverishly, but Reels, interestingly enough, has a deal with Peacock.
Yeah, but they aren't shown on Peacock.
Right. And I was trying to make sure of that. There are certain elements of Reels that are shown on Peacock.
Yeah.
There are obvious reasons why MLW is not part of that. Obvious reasons. So again, that just kind of, I think MLW right now is, strangely enough, in the same situation that Impact was in several years ago, when they were struggling for a TV home. And every TV home they found was a home that nobody knew about. You know, we couldn't find Pop TV. You know, we couldn't find some of these other channels. And so even with Access TV, you know, there's still some limited spaces, but at least they have their mobile app that
and
show,
YouTube,
right?
Yeah.
And that the show airs on their weekly show airs on regularly, and they have ways to get that pay-per-view out so that people can access it. MLW is going to need to do this, or else they're going to be forgotten about. There's too much wrestling out there for them not to be live and accessible. So they're going to have to figure this out quickly. This is the thing that did ECW in, not being able to have a regular television home. The issue wasn't attendance. They had plenty of folks coming to their shows. Their shows were sold out, but they had no place to air it. It is the equivalent of if a tree falls in a forest and there's nobody there to hear it. Is there sound? Well, we can assume there is, but there's nobody to authenticate it. So we can assume, MLW, you're doing great things. But if we find out about it 2, 3, 4, 5 months from now, we've already lost interest because the rest of the wrestling world has progressed at an amazing speed. So I hope for their sake that they're able to find a deal that's going to work, that allows them to go live in some place that we can find them.
Yeah, because go ahead, A. Tessel.
I was gonna say I just want them to win. To be fair, I just want MLW to win. And one, just to see another wrestling company do good things. But the second one, to help with my confusion, because half the time I'm posting stuff like I posted when the news came out about EJ and Duca, moving away from MLW, but then like weeks later, I'm even, I think still now, I'm still seeing images of him on their page, and I'm like, hold on, did he actually leave or not? But then you find out it was something that was taped months ago. So there's that, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who is confused as a wrestling fan and all the rest of it. We're hearing spoilers. We don't care about watching anything or trying to find it. So no one, so no one does that. So it needs to happen. And like Gerard said, they're in a very similar position to where Impact was, where people will just lose interest. And it's not like they're not doing good stuff. Right. The content is decent. The wrestlers that they've got, whether they're coming up, whether they're big stars, like Fatu, for example, they've got some great guys within their ranks. And so we just need to see that, come to the forefront, and these potential and all these potentials be fulfilled in front of our eyes, and not just in the back of our mind, if it's even there. Yeah. So
like the last time I remember watching them, they were kind of picking up to some degree where Lucha Underground had left off. Yeah. And I was so excited because I was a massive Lucha fan. But then if you can't find it, you can't keep up. You don't know what's happening. Yeah. And so, I do wish them the best. I want them to win.
So do I. And I think the only thing I was going to say too, especially too with the tapings, if they air 2-3 months later, title reigns, like I said, I already mentioned that a new women's featherweight champion was crowned. There was another new champion crowned at the tapings, which was pretty significant. I'm not gonna, I guess, spoil that one. But stuff like that too, it kind of like the question also is, when does their reign start? It's kind of hard to keep stuff like that a secret. I mean, Impact too, but at least their stuff, the most they film ahead of time, I think, is like 4 weeks normally only. So like a month. MLW is 2 or 3, 4 months at a time sometimes, which is an extensive period of time. But hopefully, they have a good product. They just signed some new people. Ricky Shane Page is there, Delmy Exo, John Morrison, whatever name he goes by now. They've had Billy Starks on there, Becca's there. They have so many like good new talents. Alex Hammerstone is still running, through there. They have a lot of promising talent. It's just now getting their stuff together. I have no idea if they're going to extend their Reels deal. I heard Johnny KO by the looks of it. That's true.
That's funny.
That was
funny,
awesome. I am still reeling from that. That was still awesome to see him do that at Creator Clash. That was good. But to kind of close things out today, Gerard, are you ready to unload some? Wait. That was not me. I really want to play my clip, PK. You know, you said at the beginning, Gerard, that this was going to be unpredictable.
I did.
You did.
I did.
I'm playing my clip.
Wrestling facts.
Now I got to start it over.
Vintage wrestling facts. Yeah.
Oh, TK. Well, I got to go back to 1986 for this one, because for wrestling historians and for a lot of folks, this is really a special day, because the first annual Jim Crockett Memorial Tag Team Tournament was held on this day in 1986. It produced what we now know as the Crockett Cup. So let me just try to make sense for it for current fans. So if you think about like King of the Ring, with that being, you know, kind of a one-night single elimination tournament, well, this was a tag team tournament that predated King of the Ring, and it actually went over 2 nights. It was 16 teams, and they fought for the Crockett Cup and $1 million. And so the tournament came down to the final 2 teams, the Road Warriors and Ronnie Garvin and Magnum TA. The Road Warriors would win. Interestingly enough, this was actually held in what was known as the Louisiana Superdome, now the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. I don't think that they had 75,000 people like they did at WrestleMania 30 and 34, but a big building like that still made for great optics. But yeah, the Crockett Cup, dating back to 1986, and I've heard rumors that the latest installment of the Crockett Cup is coming a little bit later this year by way of the NWA. So be on the lookout for that. 1 year later, in 1987, in Oklahoma, Big Bubba Rogers, who the rest of the world would come to know as the Big Boss Man, defeated the one-man gang, who later on would be known as Akeem the African Dream. Yeah, there's a whole story behind that. Big Bubba Rogers beats the one-man gang to become the UWF World Heavyweight Champion, the UWF, Universal Wrestling Federation, the territory formerly known as Mid-South, which would eventually get merged into the NWA and WCW. And speaking of WCW, we go to 1998, where WCW held their Spring Stampede pay-per-view. Now, think about it. It's 1998. WCW is still kind of hot right now. Yet there were only 7,500 fans at this show in Denver. Go figure. I can't imagine it, but it happened in 98. And just to think about how big this card was, Goldberg at this point on this show took his streak to 74-0. So we're still very much in that Goldberg run, and they still only had 7,500 folks at this show. A couple of other big news from this particular show. Raven defeats DDP in a Ravens Rules match to become the United States champion. And then Randy Savage defeats Sting in a no DQ match to win the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. This was 98, WCW, again, in front of 7,500 fans. Got to throw that out there because it's red hot in 98. Now we move to this day in 1999, where things were equally interesting, as on an episode of Nitro, Psychosis wins a 4-way match against Blitzkrieg, Juventud Guerrero, and Rey Mysterio to become the WCW Cruiserweight champion. Cruiserweight times were very, very fun in the WCW era. Let's move forward all the way to 2004. Now, this is a little controversial only because of the names, and I almost forgot that this actually happened. But in the main event of Raw, remember, it's 2004. Edge is teaming with the World Heavyweight Champion, who happens, I have to say his name. How do I say it? His last name rhymes with quinoa. That's him. He was the World Heavyweight Champion then. And he teamed with Edge, and they actually won the World Tag Team Championships, defeating Batista and Ric Flair, making the guy whose name rhymes with quinoa as a double champion. Pretty crazy to think that that happened in 2004, just a month after, of course, Mr. Quinoa wins the World Championship at WrestleMania 20. Very, very interesting. Moving past quinoa and all things that desire to be healthy. We go to 2009, where TNA had a pay-per-view called Lockdown. Now, the cool thing about this Lockdown pay-per-view was every match was held inside of a steel cage. Kind of neat, kind of different. Couple of major things coming out of this. Team 3D, which was Devon and Brother Ray, not to be confused with Bully Ray or Bubba Ray, defeated Beer Money. That's James Storm and Bobby Roode in what was a winner-take-all Philadelphia street fight. Now, at the time, Team 3D held the IWGP Tag Team Championships. Beer Money were the TNA World Tag Team Champions, and so Team 3D win both titles. Interestingly enough, again, the relationship goes back that far between New Japan and Impact. At that same card, Mick Foley in 2009 defeats Sting to become the TNA World Champion. It's mind-boggling to even think about that right now. So that's crazy. Now, here's something that's crazy.
I remember this. Yes, I remember this episode.
So you guys remember, we were just talking about this last Monday, where there were travel issues on Monday Night Raw, where, you know, folks had to kind of come in and fill in for Raw. So that was here in the States.
Yeah.
Imagine that happening internationally. Yeah. Well, you didn't have to imagine, because on this day in 2010, I mean, even just telling you this sounds wild. A volcano erupting in Iceland.
This.
I could stop there. A volcano erupting in Iceland. Got it. So that created a lot of travel issues for WWE folks. So an episode of Raw became Monday Night SmackDown, since all the Raw stars were stuck in the UK.
Plus Triple H, if I recall correctly. Triple H was the only Raw guy on that show, if what I recall
That is correct.
Wow.
That is correct.
Wow.
And so they had 4 matches on this show.
Yeah.
4 in 2010. This was still a 3-hour Raw.
And Ray at Straight Edge Society. I think Edge was there.
You were on it.
Yeah.
Because that was the main event. Edge, Rey Mysterio, and Triple H defeating Chris Jericho, CM Punk, and Luke Gallows, representing the Straight Edge Society. Yeah. Again, I say a volcano erupted in Iceland. Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, on that same day in the States, strange things continue to happen in TNA as RVD, Rob Van Dam, defeats AJ Styles to become the TNA World Champion. Now, this day in 2011, WWE continues to be in the UK. This time, they were doing an episode of SmackDown at the O2 Arena in London. And on this night, The Big Show and Kane became the WWE Tag Team Champions, defeating a team called The Core. Now, you guys remember, the group that was season 1 of NXT. Oh, gosh, their name escapes me, but they made John Cena join. Nexus, thank you. John Cena ended up joining, and then eventually Nexus breaks up. Well, The Core was the core of Nexus, who decided they weren't going to have a leader. But that night, they no longer had tag team titles. So just kind of happens that way. And that is a look at your vintage wrestling facts.
Vintage wrestling facts. Yeah.
Just because I want to, though.
Come on.
Oh, wait.
That was me. I wanted to.
Oh, boy.
I've never seen him do that. He's like,
wow.
He's traumatized now.
Good Lord, that's crazy.
Interestingly enough, going back to that whole the fact about the volcano, that whole event literally changed the pricing of flights from the UK to the US.
Oh,
really?
That literally changed a lot of things. There was stuff that I was doing, bringing certain like artists from the US over to the UK, and we could never do it again after that because the prices just went boom.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy. Crazy.
Yeah. Those were some crazy vintage wrestling facts. I remember that
deep for that, Bozo.
I remember that episode of SmackDown so vividly too. You know, it's crazy. Yeah, I've been to one of those shows. You know, I was at the one where they got stuck in Saudi Arabia, so NXT came in. I was there for that one. So
that was a great show.
It was crazy times. It was just the women plus the Miz, Sami Zayn, and Daniel Bryan and NXT. I remember that. Was a fun show.
So Ellie, you was at both of them.
No, I was just at the one, but I'm just like kind of reflecting on it. I was at the the one where NXT invaded, but I was thinking back to the volcanic eruption when I remember that very clearly.
What a crazy show.
They do well, like for improvisation. I will say last week's episode of Raw was a lot better than the one before, even with the travel delays. So they can pull out some good stuff when push comes to shove.
That's right.
But obviously, we are nearing towards the end of the show. But before we let everybody go, of course, you know, we have loads of stuff here on Women's Wrestling Talk. Obviously, we have WWT Live. You know, we were mentioning SmackDown and Raw. We have so many post shows that you can watch. And here to tell you more, we got our good friend TK Trinidad.
Hey peeps, TK Trinidad here, boss lady of Women's Wrestling Talk. And I want to say thank you so much for watching because you've got millions of options. Plus, you don't have to worry about sharing your password to check us out. But while you're here, hopefully you know we have so many more shows to watch, like Turnbuckle Glam, Raw Post Show, WOW Post Show, AEW Dynamite Post Show, Women's Wrestling Army Post Show, NXT Post Show, Impact Wrestling Post Show, AEW Rampage and SmackDown Live Post Show, On the Scroll, ROH Post Show, WWT Live, plus all of our interviews with the hottest women's wrestlers in the game. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. Check out our website at www.talkpod.com and follow us on all social media platforms at www.talkpod, and make sure to spread the word. That means send this to the group chat. Yes, even the person with the green bubble. Thanks again so much for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Ciao for now.
Like TK said, there we go.
Ella, J, it's Ella, J, Ella, J. It's Ella J.
I guess that's karma for me playing the one on Gerard. But before we get out of here, guys, Mr. A Dazzle, let the people know where they can find you.
Yes, I'm that guy with the green bubble. You can find me on Instagram. Oh Lord. You can find me on Instagram, Black Wrestling Alliance, the best place for all things Black Wrestling on the internet altogether. You can also find me every Tuesday at 6:30 English time, 1:30 EST, with this guy, Gerard Bonner, and my good friend Mex on Wrestle Extra. And you can also find me on Twitter, BWA Dazzle.
Gerard. Damn!
This is taking all my strength. Oh gosh!
Gerard, speak fast.
Yeah, you can find me at Bonnerfied on all of the socials. Southern Honor, Battle Slam, which we got a big show coming up this Sunday. Nightmare Factory, hanging with A Dazzle, the faction, and you can get this shirt and all my other merch at prowrestlingtees.com/Bonnerfied.
Allegedly.
He knocked my light out.
That's so funny.
Like she knocked my light out.
We're talking about how my lights went out before this.
Oh wow.
Yo, this is hilarious.
Oh wow.
All right. Now,
Done. I'll see you later. Congratulations.
That's right. We will see you guys later. Because I'm closing the show right now. You can follow me on Twitter at It's Ella J. If you go to the link in my bio, you can find everything there. And hopefully now that's enough time. No more clips. We'll see you guys later.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.